We've spent a lot of time talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. There's new information today that somebody who might be a key witness in her case, at least for the prosecution of her case, at least for the government, that is, as you can recall, they're just sort of trying to investigate every loose end, every tentacle that is remotely connected to Ghislaine Maxwell, they're peering into. And we have a new witness, somebody who is now potentially flipping and working with the investigators to incriminate not only Ghislaine Maxwell, but other people who are in her close circle. Let's take a look at this story over from Radar Online. They were the ones who got the exclusive on this. Clinton aide Doug Band flips, implicates the boss in a pedophile ring probe. So Clinton aide Doug Band flips, meaning he's implicating his boss. Who is that? Well, Clinton. Band, who's 48 years old, provided Justice Department officials, this is new information, with evidence that could land Bill Clinton in trouble amid the ongoing child sex trafficking investigation involving Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Band was recently interviewed by Gabriel Sherman for Vanity Fair's December issue, which I'm going to show you here in a second, in addition to detailing his ties to the pedophile billionaire and Epstein's child fixer, Ghislaine Maxwell. He also confirmed that the 42nd president of the United States visited Epstein on Pedophile Island. And there was a lot of question about this. If you recall, there was flight logs where it's like, Bill Clinton and Chris Tucker and Kevin Spacey, and they were all on a plane together and they were going back and forth to Epstein's Island. I think there was some allegations that Bill Clinton had been on there like a dozen times, right? More than once. And he has repeatedly denied it. His press conference, his press people have all denied it repeatedly. Well, now one of his own advisors implicates him. We're going to learn more about who Doug Band is here in a second. Clinton traveled to Little St. James with Epstein in January 2003, says Band. He confirmed just weeks after the two men spent 10 days touring Africa. So it was confirmed that Clinton had been sort of palling around with Jeffrey Epstein. They went to Africa together. And Doug Band is now confirming that he also went to the island, even though everybody knows he went to the island, but he just doesn't know that we know, so he doesn't admit it. Who is Doug Band? This is some more information about him over from Wikipedia. As we learned, he's 48 years old, went to Georgetown University Law, president of a company called Teneo. He's a lawyer, adjunct professor over at New York University, former advisor to President Bill Clinton on a number of different boards, Coca-Cola, different advisory boards for soccer. And he was born 1978, businessman, lawyer. He was the deputy assistant to President Bill Clinton in the White House. Later, he was counselor to President Bill Clinton. Band was, quote, the key architect of the Clinton post-presidency. He created the Clinton Global Initiative. Band later worked for the William J. Clinton Foundation. He also traveled to North Korea to orchestrate the release of 2 Americans. Served on Coca-Cola's board. Early on in the White House, he began working on in 1995 as an unpaid intern for Clinton's White House counsel's office. Band then served on the White House counsel's office staff for 4 years. He became a special assistant to the president and one of the youngest deputy assistants ever to serve a president. He then served as the president's aide, traveling nearly to 125 countries, over 2,000 cities. So he spent a lot of time with Bill Clinton. This was not just sort of a Monica Lewinsky. This was somebody who was actually involved in a lot of other things. Actually, she was too. But this traveled around, traveled the world with Bill Clinton, so presumably knows a lot about him and knows a lot about what he did, especially back during those days. Remember, all post-presidency stuff, which again, Clinton has denied. According to Radar Online, they are reporting the timing of Band's interview was a bit confounding. It landed a week after his juicy tell-all hit newsstands, and he later announced he was stepping down from consulting at the firm that he was consulting at. Radar has now learned that this was also around the time that Clinton's bagman for close to 2 decades spoke with criminal investigators from the Southern District of New York. So what they're saying is, in this kind of bad sentence, is that he released a book, gave a tell-all to Vanity Fair, and then also was communicating with criminal investigators from the Southern District of New York. This makes him the first Epstein-Maxwell associate who is known to have cooperated with authorities in the most recent probe into the accused pedophiles. So this is a big deal. Band became fast friends with Epstein and Maxwell back in 2002, at a time when he was at the height of his powers due to his role as a key architect of Clinton's post-White House career. Band first showed up on Epstein's flight manifest in March of that year, when he flew from JFK Airport down to in New York to London with his boss, Epstein, Maxwell, Sarah Kellen, and 3 Secret Service agents. So he's been on the plane himself, and now he's saying Clinton was also there. Kellen would later be identified both as a recruiter and a victim of Epstein, but unlike most victims, she was over the age of 18 when she first met the pedophile. And then this is that other story, basically coming from Vanity Fair. This is a summation of it. You can see down here, this was written by Daniel Bates back on December 2nd, 2020. So this was right about the same time that Band was speaking to Vanity Fair. This was a report on that. Bill Clinton's former advisor spoken out in an extraordinary tell-all interview about the Clintons to Vanity Fair. He described being so close to the Clintons that it was like being in a cult that is hard to get yourself out of. Band, who was Clinton's body man, became like an adopted son to him, revealed that Clinton sabotaged Hillary's 2008 presidential run. He claims Clinton didn't want Hillary to win and hogged the spotlight from him. He said he was used to it being all about him, and if she won, it would be all about her. He added, in the White House, he would be back under a microscope without the benefit of being the one in charge. 48-year-old also claims that Clinton did visit Jeffrey Epstein's island, dubbed the Pedo Island, despite his denials. He also claims that Chelsea Clinton was so close with Epstein's alleged madam, Ghislaine Maxwell, because she had access to yachts and nice homes. Band began to leave Clinton world around 2011 when Chelsea began to assume more power and control over the family affairs. And then this is another picture from that story with, of course, Bill Clinton and Ghislaine Maxwell on a jet flying off to somewhere. So Clinton, according to Band, Clinton did visit the Caribbean island owned by Jeffrey Epstein in 2003. Despite his denials, Clinton with Ghislaine Maxwell on the private plane in 2002. So this is not just somebody who was, writing a blog on the internet saying that they found something. This is somebody who has been intimately involved, intimately connected with the Clinton family, and now they're working with federal investigators about this stuff. Whew, it's juicy. We have, they joined a trip with an additional 7 Secret Service agents, Band's one-time girlfriend, supermodel Naomi Campbell. Later, Band and Clinton flew around the world with Epstein, country hopping. The men did not stay on with Epstein as he traveled to Brunei, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and other places. Kellen and Maxwell joined the men. These infamous trips came in September 2002 when Band joined Epstein and Clinton on their way through Africa. Kevin Spacey was there. Chris Tucker was there. It's likely that 4 other guests who were of interest to the federal prosecutors may have been there. Kellen, Cindy Lopez, Chantel Davies, and Andrea Mitrovic. Davies, though not underage, was another of Epstein's victims. She would eventually recruit her younger sister for the pedophile. Band claimed that he spent years begging the Clintons to cut ties with Maxwell after Epstein's arrest, but to no avail. He said he has no issue cozying up to Maxwell at a party in Valentine's Day in New York. Hillary and Bill's daughter said Ghislaine had access to yachts and nice homes. They needed that. And so we all kind of know where this is going. We have the registration was tied to his work in Saudi Arabia on the $500 billion effort to build a new city in the country that is being spearheaded by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Same country that Epstein, the convicted sex offender and wealthy financier, who was found dead in a Manhattan federal jail, was discovered to have entered multiple times using a fake passport. It's unclear if Band was being altruistic or if officials forced him to come in and speak with the prosecutors. He was one of 70 people named by Virginia Roberts in a 2016 court filing that named people who said had knowledge or might have knowledge of Epstein's sex trafficking. So it's an actual witness now. Radar Online is confirming that he's actually communicating with federal investigators. And we'll see what this does. This is another witness. And remember what the problem with the Ghislaine Maxwell case is most of this stuff is under seal. We can't see any of the evidence. I did a podcast with Sean Atwood the other day, big true crime podcast guy. So if you missed that, go check out his channel. I thought it was a good interview. We were talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And, the big question here is, what is Ghislaine going to do? What are her defenses? How does she escape this? And I broke this up into 2 different buckets. We have the bucket of the actual defenses that are responding to the accusation. So, allegations of sex trafficking, allegations of perjury, allegations of enticing people to transport in an international trade path of commerce such that there was a conspiracy, and they have really 4 charges: conspiracy, transportation, and then the actual sex. So there was a conspiracy, there was the transportation, then there was the sex. And when we asked you about it, you lied about it. 4 charges, all in a row like that. And the problem with responding to those charges is we don't know what the evidence really says. We've got 3 victims. We know who one is because she identified herself, but the other 2 kind of still floating around. And most of the court documents, the motions, any of the requests that we've been trying to identify, all of the journals that have been covered, many of those things are just redacted till the end of the earth. We can't see any of the text. It's all gone. It's all blacked out because everything is being held under seal. So how do you analyze those? How do you build a defense if you can't see any of the evidence? Well, you can sort of make the same defense arguments that you would make in any type of case like this, right? That the case is very old, that the victims or the accusers, if you don't want to identify them as victims yet, they have ulterior motives. They were suing him financially. They wanted, financial compensation. There were civil lawsuits flying around, and they have ulterior motives. And so there's a lot of different ways that you could attack that case. But the more interesting defense here are these process crimes. Whether they're trying to show that there was a due process violation because she doesn't have access to her defense team. She doesn't have access to a laptop. She can't participate in her own defense, can't communicate with her lawyers, is being treated poorly, cruel and unusual punishment, is, patted down. I think it's been like 1,400 times as of mid-February. So, they're going to make those claims and they're going to start to lay down the framework for an appeal later down the road. And one of these is probably going to be prosecutorial misconduct and a whole slew of other allegations, a whole slew of other claims. But now we know there's a witness that we didn't really know about previously, somebody with a lot of inside information about specific connections to Ghislaine, to Clinton, to Chelsea Clinton, to Bill Clinton, potentially to Hillary Clinton. And we'll see if that opens up new angles for defense or new charges, and maybe even new charges for other people who are involved in that inner circle. Pinky2 says, Band sounds very tied to Clinton, and he sounds credible. It will depend on what the investigators find. I just feel the FBI might not be the one to investigate, with a very smiley emoji. The tell-all, if Band wrote one, sounds like a curious deal. Maybe not as credible, not sure. But if Clinton pal around with Epstein for 10 days, he would have known by the time he went to the island what Epstein is into. Going back and forth a dozen times looks bad for us. Looks bad for Clinton if he did so. Stuff we do does catch up to us. Well, I think that it's pretty clear that, maybe Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, they had a particular proclivity for certain types of females. Let's just say that. So I think that he probably did not need 10 days to figure out what Epstein was all about. Probably could do it in about an hour, and then they could make a decision on how best to pursue those proclivities. So obviously reprehensible stuff. Shouldn't be making light of it, but we'll see where that one goes as well. So Ghislaine Maxwell, new evidence, interesting stuff. Stick around. We're going to be covering a lot more Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. Her trial, I think, is still TBD, but it's going to be scheduled. My last understanding was sometime in July or June. So we'll be following that as it gets closer to that.